Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 1, Episode 2, The Idea with Reilly Smith. Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Inked Podcast. Today, we are kicking off our first season of the show by talking about what to do when you have your first story idea and how to handle all of the ideas that you'll have after that. Today, I'm handing the mic over to one of my dear friends, Miss Annabelle Adamson. How are you doing today, Miss Annabelle?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing very well, and I'm very excited to have you on the podcast today. And today, Annabelle is going to be asking me some questions about how we handle our ideas as writers. Because here on the podcast, we know thus far that every first episode of the season will be guested by myself as just a little bit of a Kickstarter slash overview of what we'll be talking about. So, Annabelle, you have your list of questions. Are you ready to get going?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, then take it away.
All right. Now it's time to jump into talking about our ideas as writers. We know that our ideas are the first step in our writing journey, but where do we draw ideas from as writers? And how do we manage them when we have them? Well, I think our first question for Reilly should clear this up nicely. So, Reilly, where do you find yourself getting your ideas from most often?
So, as a writer, I tend to find inspiration from a lot of things, but one of my favorite spots to get inspiration and get ideas from is my brain, obviously. But I get a lot of inspiration from my dreams. So, like at night when I'm dreaming, I normally have these really elaborate dreams due to my overly creative brain. And so I wake up the next morning and I write all of those ideas down because that's a great source of ideas. It's definitely your dreams. And you can definitely take your dreams and make sense of them. So like if your dreams are anything like mine and they're absolutely insane, then you can probably take little snippets of that and use that for like a story idea or like a scene in your story, anything like that. But another place that I really like to get ideas from is Pinterest. That is like the writer's tool for ideas because on Pinterest you can find so many writing prompts, picture prompts, etc. So yeah, you can use both of those as great resources. Those are both where I get my ideas from, but I also get ideas from looking at the world around me and like thinking, okay, I want to change the world in this particular way. Now, not every work you have to do has to change the world, but if you're someone who likes to look at the world and be like, I have opinions on this, and maybe you want to share those opinions, you can do that in fiction or nonfiction form. So, yeah, just kind of A, my dreams, B, Pinterest, and C, just the world around me.
It's really cool. What is the next step that you take after you have the idea for a story?
So there are three different ways that you can approach this when you first have your idea. And one, write it down. Obviously, that is something that you're going to hear me say in every step of this. It doesn't matter if I'm talking about the three different versions of doing it, you're going to write it down first always because if you're like anything like me and my brain functions to where I remember things for a long time, but if I don't write them down, I will forget them eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So like I have an idea, and so I write it down immediately as I have it, not necessarily to be used immediately, but definitely for like using it in the future and future stories. So definitely write it down. That's the first thing. The second thing you can do is, again, write it down. That is obviously a reoccurring theme. But you can write it down and then you can look for more inspiration and see if you can expound on this story. So like again, if you want like some inspiration on this idea you've had, then you can like go to Pinterest and see if you can find some like picture inspiration um for different like pictures, different themes type things. And then the third thing you can do is again write it down. That is a reoccurring theme. You can write it down and then you can try to find a topic and theme from that idea, which we will talk about topic and theme way later in this show. But that is just kind of what you can do with your original story ideas. So, yeah, again to reiterate, write them down always. That is always the smart thing to do. Two, you can find inspiration about them, and then three, you can also yeah, just oh wow, why did I just suddenly forget my third point? But yeah, so you can write them down. You can write them down and find inspo for them, or you can write them down and find a topic and theme related to those things. I found my third point, guys. Um, so yeah, those are the three ways you can go about your ideas after you originally have them.
And how do you organize all your ideas to keep them in order?
So, this is one thing that many writers probably struggle with because we have a lot of ideas quite often. We have a myriad of ideas constantly, 24/7, 365. So, obviously, having that many ideas, it can get hard to keep up with all of them. So, my favorite things to do to keep my ideas in order is if you're like me and you're someone who uses your computer a lot for your writing and for keeping your ideas straight, is I like to have folders on my computer and like my files, and I will have them labeled for either the story itself. So, like Dream Story 1 if you don't have a title for it, or you can put the title if you do have a title for it. And you can just put all of your ideas, all of your inspiration into that folder for that story and just kind of keep your ideas straight. And if you want to go a step further with your organization within your folder about this story, you can put, okay, there's a folder inside this folder for inspiration. There's one for my own ideas. There's one for picture prompts. There's one for writing prompts. Like all of these things, you can just organize it a little more detailed. There is one more thing that you can do though. You can also organize your ideas about this one story into how they would fall in the plot line. So I like to do a brainstorming session. And when I do those brainstorming sessions, I just throw up all my scene ideas for this entire story. I have a blackboard, and so I take like sticky notes or like index cards and throw them all over this blackboard and get as many ideas out there as possible. Even if I don't think they will fit perfectly, I'll still throw them up there, and then I'll look and see, okay, this can fit into my exposition, this can fit into my rising action, my climax, my turning points, etc., etc. So you can also organize it by plot. So the to reiterate what I've said, I know I tend to ramble a lot, but to reiterate what I just said, the first way you can do it is to organize it by story. The second way you can do it is to organize it by like your inspiration, and the third way you can organize it is by plot. And those are just three ways I like to do it. But if you are not one of those people and you do not like to do it that way, then find your own way, because it's very possible to find something that works better for you than it would for me. So definitely experiment, kind of find the way you like to organize your ideas, and then just keep up with them that way.
What is your biggest piece of advice for when you need to pick one idea?
So this is a really hard question because there's so many good pieces of advice for picking your idea. But I would have to say my number one biggest piece of advice for picking the first idea or your 50th idea to write a story based on is to pick the one you're passionate about. So, say you have a story that you're really, really passionate about, and you're like, this is my favorite story. I think this is so cool. Like, this is the one I really think that I could write and enjoy writing and love writing. You just take that and you go, okay, I'm going to write this. And so you pick that idea that you're passionate about, because if you're not passionate about your story, it's going to be flat, it's going to be dull. Your reader's going to be able to tell that you didn't enjoy it as much as they did. So definitely pick the story you are passionate about 100%, because if you don't, you're going to end up with a dead story, because if you're not passionate as the writer of your story, then how do you expect other people to be passionate about your writing as well? So yeah, just be passionate about it for sure. I know that was a long ramble for a very short answer, but
What is one thing you want all writers to know about their ideas?
oh dear. Again, there's so many things that I could say to answer that, but I would say the one thing that I want all writers to know about their ideas is no single idea is perfect. Okay, so you may be looking at your ideas going, this one is going to have so many plot holes, and this one is not going to have a very well developed main character, or this one is going to have this and this issue. Just know that none of your ideas are ever going to be perfect, but you can make them better. Like, you can take your idea that you have and you can look over it and you can plot your story and you can plan and you can make it better. So just know that the original idea does not have to be perfect and it doesn't have to make sense to anyone else but you yet. Your job as a writer is to make that idea, that passion, that story that you have in your head into something that makes sense for other people. So yeah, just make sure that you know that your ideas don't have to be perfect and that they don't have to make sense to anyone else yet, because that's what you're there for, to make that story make sense. All right, guys. Well, it looks like we are out of time for today. So, thank you so much, Annabelle, for coming on and asking me the questions. I really appreciate you coming in.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you could come on. And as always, thank you to our listeners for being here, and we will see you in our next episode. Bye, guys. Hello again, friends. I am so glad that you joined us for this episode of the Inked Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, then remember that you can find more about our podcast at theinkedworld.com, or you can find us at our YouTube channel, The Inked Podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.